Welcome to the Mariners Virtual Baseball Bash and this morning's media session.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's media session during the Mariners Baseball Bash. As a reminder, the call is being carried live on our social media channels, and I want to extend a special thank you to everyone tuning in on our platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch. Fans watching at home have the opportunity to submit their questions for today's guest. Just write your questions in the chat function, and we'll select a few to be answered. For me, we'll be using the raise hand feature on this call. Our first guest today, Mariners Director of Player Development, Andy McKay. Andy will begin with a brief statement before taking questions. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, everybody. I'd like to begin by saying thank you to everyone involved in making the 2021 Baseball Bash a success. From our staff and our players to everyone involved with our Mariner PR and marketing departments and our local media members, we all work together to provide a unique and impactful experience for our fans. And as you know, our fans are the reason for everything that we do. We believe in the work that we're doing, and we appreciate the opportunity to share a bit of our story with you today. We continue to be committed to both our people and our process. Let me give you a quick update on our people. Our 2021 version of our PD staff is the best that we've had over the last 6 years. Led by Tony Arnerich, the commitment that they've shown to continuing education, personal growth, and serving our players during this very difficult season has been exceptional. We've added Emmanuel Cifuentes to become our Assistant Director of Player Development. He's been part of our scouting department. He's serving as our Major League Advanced Scout before moving into our amateur scouting department. His knowledge of our Major League process combined with his experience in amateur scouting combined to give him a unique lens in which to help us lead player development. We've also added Chris Negron, Colin Cowgill, Eric Young Jr., Franklin Gutierrez, and Hisashi Uekuma to our on-field coaching staff. This gives us 5 more former Mariners who have played in our current process and are now excited to teach it to our current players. We would like to thank Joe Thurston for his work with our Major League team last season. He seamlessly filled in during a difficult 2020 and was a tremendous help for Scott and our players. He will be our AA hitting coach this year in Arkansas and will continue to impact our young prospects on and off the field. Congratulations to Trent Blank, who is promoted to our Major League bullpen coach and our Director of Pitching Strategies. He will do great in this position and will allow him to continue to be part of developing our young minor league pitchers alongside with Max Wiener and our affiliate coaches. Additionally, we'd like to thank Hugh Quattlebaum for serving as our hitting coordinator over the last 3 years, as well as helping Scott this summer in the major leagues. Unfortunately, he recently accepted a job as the Director of Hitting with the New York Mets. While losing Hugh hurts, we try to look at it as an indicator of the effectiveness of our program and how our coaches are viewed within the industry. We are fortunate to have Connor Dawson on board and ready to go and step into Hugh's shoes as our minor league hitting coordinator. In terms of process, 2020 provided us with plenty of challenges and opportunities to be creative and to find new ways to develop our players. The past 10 months has been our greatest period of staff development over the last 6 years. Together, Summer Camp 2.0 and our alternate site in Tacoma provided a great opportunity for many of our young players to work together and be exposed to a level of the game that they normally would not have been able to. We had players from every level of our system competing side by side with our established major league players and coaches. The mentoring relationships that were formed will provide benefits for years to come. In Tacoma, we had many highlights on the field, but our social justice educational program is what made us most proud. Throughout the summer, we met as a group and discussed topics ranging from the civil rights movement, redlining, mass incarceration, systemic racism, and the events of 2020. Players and staff together had these conversations and demonstrated a genuine desire to learn. This program culminated with our partnership with the Rainiers and the Tacoma School District to record our players reading children's books about race for teachers to use this year in their virtual classrooms. I'd like to acknowledge Dan Wilson and his leadership for spearheading our book reading program. The Fall League in Peoria was a success, with many of our players getting their first taste of baseball for 2020. The highlights were numerous, but none more so than the performance of Wyatt Mills, that led him to being added to our 40-man roster, as well as the development of many of our young players from our campus in the Dominican Republic under the leadership of Cesar Nicholas. Finally, we'd like to thank our affiliate partners and their fans who continue to be tremendous partners for us in developing our players. All of our minor league affiliates went through an incredibly challenging summer of 2020, and we look forward to being back on the field with our partners and their fans from Tacoma to Arkansas to Everett, Modesto, and both our campuses in Peoria and Boca Chica. I appreciate you for allowing me to give you this opening statement, and I'm now happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions for Andy? First question is from Corey Brock.
Andy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Corey. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. I wanted to ask, I know we've sort of kicked this around a little bit, the time in Tacoma last year, probably extremely beneficial for the younger guys, maybe some of the guys who had just been drafted in terms of facing that competition. But for guys like Logan and Jarred, what did they truly get out of that? Was something better than nothing, or how would you sort of characterize what they were able to squeeze out of that time?
Well, I think we did a good job of taking advantage of what we were allowed to do. And, it's easy to look at what we couldn't do, but we chose to focus on, the advantages. And, for Jarred and Logan specifically, the names you mentioned, them getting to be in Summer Camp 2.0 and get to be in that stadium, in that clubhouse, to be around those particular players and to begin forming relationships and letting them understand what it's like to be on the field with Scott, to be around Jarred DeHart, people who are going to be coaching them in the future, I think will play huge dividends. Moving into the alternate site, I think they got a real education on what Major League Baseball is like, and seeing players going up and down and seeing the highs and lows and being that close to the intensity of a Major League season and being able to be part of somebody going up for the first time and seeing somebody come down, to see how Kendall Graveman handled an injury and coming into Tacoma each day and doing his work to rehab, but also taking the time to figure out how can I help our young players. And Kendall modeled that tremendously to all of those players. So I think the benefits were really endless, but maybe the most impactful thing was just putting that group of players together in that experience every day and letting those relationships continue to form. I think one of the coolest things that happened, we were playing an inter squad late in the year, and I was coaching third base. Dylan Moore was rehabbing, and he was on base. He slid into third base, and we were talking, and he says, "I cannot believe how much better Noelvi Marte is from where he was in summer camp, taking ground balls with JP to what I'm watching now on this field." And just the fact that Dylan knows who Noelvi is, and Noelvi has never played a game outside of the Dominican Summer League. I thought it was great, and it kind of brought our entire organization together in a way that we couldn't have done in a normal season.
Next question is from Ryan Divish.
Andy, first of all, did you read all those books behind you? And then secondly, can you just walk us through what the minor league season is going to be like? We've heard that single A and double A are going to start late. How will Tacoma work and the protocols that you need to operate?
Yeah. I'm assuming the first question was rhetorical, so we'll skip through that one. But in terms of the minor league season, we don't have a lot of information right now. And right now we're assuming that we're going to have Major League Spring Training as scheduled. When that is over, we will begin minor league spring training, which we would expect to run basically during the month of April, maybe slightly into May. And I think all that it's the only information we have, and we have to continue to plan on that. In terms of protocols, I am not aware of what they would be. I'm working off the assumption that they would be very similar to what we were dealing with this summer. Obviously, we all know what's happening in Arizona right now. And I trust our partners in MLB to do the best they can to take care of us and keep everybody safe. So, and we have a lot of players that have been through it, and so they understand the responsibility that they have, to make good decisions off the field and to follow the protocols to keep themselves and and everybody else safe. So that's about as much information as we have. And I'm planning on being in Peoria on February 15th, and I'll probably be there for a while.
I'm curious about the AAA scenario. You're going to probably have 60 guys there, and you'll have to have a AAA assortment to be ready while the season's going. Would they do games in Arizona to keep them ready? Would they start the AAA season? I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of options that have been discussed, but I mean, I know you want to keep those guys ready and playing to help the big league team.
Correct. And so that becomes the one unique level. And I would think all of those things are options, whether it's being in Tacoma, which would be ideal, to staying in Arizona, to actually starting the PCL in some format. But honestly, I don't know. And anything I offered you right now would just be my opinion. And you have access to really the same information I have. So right now, we're assuming the PCL will start right on time. And as we're told to adjust, we will adjust.
Next question from Larry Stone.
Hi, Andy.
All right, how are you?
Good, doing good. For the record, I've read every book on my bookshelf.
The bookshelf has taken on a life of its own.
We've asked you this question at various junctures, but I wonder what your current thoughts are on what are the ramifications for player development of having no minor league season last year. Does it slow down the timetable for a lot of guys?
I think it's one of those questions it's going to take time to answer. I do think it's going to slow down the development for some players. I think other players aren't really going to be impacted by it. And, rather than trying to guess and predict the specifics, I would just rather let it play out. But I think both of those things are real. And, the hardest part, from a skill development standpoint, we were able to take huge strides with a lot of players. But developing skills, then having those skills transfer into a competitive environment was just something that we weren't able to accomplish. And so whether you're talking about a Cal Raleigh or a Julio Rodriguez, for example, the whole point of playing minor league seasons is to get through the grind of 145 games roughly. And, you couldn't replicate that in Tacoma. We had a lot of days off. We had a lot of practice days, but the hardest part about professional baseball is the schedule. And, when you're not playing well, having to go out and play when you're not good, having to go out and play when you're 0 for 20 and you're facing an ace. For Logan Gilbert to get to repeatedly work out of jams in high stress environments, we just weren't able to replicate that. So those are the things that are missing. But in terms of, our pitchers developing their pitch arsenal, we took huge strides. In terms of Noelvi Marte becoming a someone who we think can play shortstop, he took real strides there. Being able to match Jarred Kelenic up and get more left-handed at bats. Against left-handed pitching, we're able to do that. So I think time will tell, and I think all those scenarios will play out. But I do think it'll be less impactful than people think, and I think that you're going to see a lot of players just not miss a beat. And Wyatt Mills, what he was able to do. He didn't come to summer camp. He didn't come to the alternate site, and he showed up in Peoria, the best version of Wyatt we'd ever seen. And I think you're going to continue to see situations like that where players took it upon themselves to make themselves better players.
Next question from Daniel Kramer.
Hey, Andy, kind of building off of that, how specifically does the cancellation of last year's minor league season kind of impact some of the workloads of some of your arms, and how will you monitor that moving forward going into this upcoming season?
Yeah, that's an issue, and that's a concern that we have to work through. And I think we have a pretty good idea in place. And again, everybody's different. So you had a Logan Gilbert kind of on the high end who was actually able to get quite a bit of work in, and had come off of a high workload in 2019. On the other end of the spectrum, you had George Kirby, who didn't have much of a workload in 2019 and didn't pitch a lot in 2020. Isaiah Campbell would fall into that bucket. So when we have a real clear sense of what the season's going to look like, there will be a lot of monitoring going on, and we'll do different things to keep that workload kind of in check with not only where they came from, but where we're hoping to get them to by the end of the year. And I think you're going to see that going on with all 29 clubs in different varieties.
And I know you talked about the missing out on the live simulations and whatnot, but just how much work were they getting at the alternate site in terms of innings and pitch counts and things like that to make up for?
And it all depended on where they came into summer camp 2.0, which was, again, it was dramatically different for some people. We had players who weren't able to do much during the original shutdown, and we had players that were very active. So on the extreme end, guys were taking the ball every 6 days and getting built up to 5 and 6 innings by the end of the summer. And on the other end, we had guys that we took 5 and 6 weeks to even get them on the mound because they weren't able to do much during the original shutdown. So again, there's quite a spectrum, and that will be a challenge as you start dividing people up between different affiliates of how you manage that workload and putting enough people at each affiliate who are ready to take the ball and give us the innings that we need.
Question from Ryan Divish.
No books this time, Andy. The structure of the changes to the minor league system, how are you going to operate within that? I know that, Everett will be high A and they only have a handful of teams so far, but we have guys remain at extended and all this other stuff as you try and slot out how you're going to build your system and where you're going to put all these guys.
So, yeah, you have it kind of penciled in terms of how you're dividing up the teams already. But again, not knowing when the season is going to start, not knowing how many games are going to be played. A lot of that is still in pencil, but obviously the biggest change is only having one short season club. And so I think the biggest area of impact is how we handle our draft class. And I think that's another example of certainly something I learned from last year, where our draft class, traditionally you sign them and they go to Everett. Certainly the college players would have all gone to Everett for the short season. But this year we saw with our own eyes that, our draft class that we brought into Seattle and into Tacoma, those players fit right in with what we were doing. And so it did make me think a little bit about where we should send our players right out of the draft and maybe thinking through it a little bit more critically and being able to move some players possibly, a little bit faster than we have in the past. So again, obviously the high school players will report to the campus in Peoria, and then the college players, depending on, we don't know what the college season is going to look like this year either. So there's just too many variables to really say exactly what it will look like. But we have the option to send them to Peoria to play in the Arizona Summer League or to join Modesto at somewhere mid-season of the Cal League.
Our first question from social media, Adam.
Hi, Andy. I got a question here from Brian on Facebook. He says, I really enjoy your focus on the people and the process. Can you discuss how that would be applied outside of a baseball context?
Sure. Well, people and process came from outside of the baseball. I kind of stole it and brought it into my work in baseball. So I think it has direct application in anything that you do, certainly as a leader, that it's kind of an internal mechanism to keep you focused on the only two things that can actually help you, which is developing your people, maximizing the impact that your people can bring you by continuing to educate them and push them and challenging them, giving them assignments. But most importantly with your people, it's asking your people, how can we better utilize you? I think every employee of every company in the world feels like they're underutilized in some area, or that they have something to offer that's not being brought to life. And so that's the people part of it. The process part of it is that, you have to define what you're doing in terms of a process. You have to get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper, and you have to create the curriculum that you're going to follow. And as I was really learning about process, I began to understand it from a coaching perspective, and I began to see people like Bill Walsh doing the exact same thing, which was, for the most part, turning off the scoreboard and focusing on how do we make this thing better and letting the scoreboard take care of itself. And then obviously Nick Saban has really brought that into kind of a vogue. He's gotten a lot of attention for how he has defined process at Alabama. So I think if you just look at it through that lens of there's only two ways that you can really help your organization, and that is through the development of your people and your process. it helps to prevent you from focusing on things that aren't really capable of helping you.
Next question from Tim Booth.
Hi, Andy. You talked a little bit a few minutes ago about Jarred and sort of what he got out of the alternate site last year. I'm curious, where do you think he should start the season at? Where do you think he will start the season at?
Yeah, that's a good question. Another one that I don't have an answer to right now. And obviously, he finished 19 at the AA level, and then, in a very short period of time. And now we have to assess what was his experience in 2020 the equivalent to. So I think anything between AA, AAA, and the big leagues is a realistic conversation, for parts of 2020. And, our focus and my focus with Jarred has always been, I think we all know where this is headed, and it's about being where his feet are and embracing his grass and finding a way to get better wherever he is. And I think he's done that. He did it last year very well. And those are tough ones to answer. I think it'll reveal itself in spring training. I think he'll show up and begin to answer that question for us a little bit. But with all of our players, we do our due diligence, and like with Jarred specifically, we've done our homework. We've tracked the development stages of every high school position player drafted that has been an impactful big leaguer for the last 20 years, and looked at what was their path like, how many at-bats did they get at each level, how did they translate, where were the mistakes made, and we're going to do our best to make the best decision possible.
Question from Ryan Divish.
I raised my hand. Andy, similar along those lines, with Julio, because of the injuries and all that, he did get some instructs time. He did get some time in the DR. Where do you see him at in that timeline of progression? I mean, did those instructs games and that little bit of time in the DR help offset some of the time missed even at the alternate training site?
I think so. And, obviously he had as tough of a year as anybody in terms of the injury that he sustained. But, very quickly when we got down to Peoria into the fall league, he was kind of the same Julio, and the ball was coming off of his bat the way that it always has. And the energy he played with, the strides he's taken in playing the outfield, he's really embraced the idea of trying to win a Gold Glove. His effort running the bases, he's running better. And all the reports that we got from the Winter League, and those reports from the Winter League came in, and not even internal reports, people from other organizations and other scouts were incredibly positive. So, in his first year, he moved through a couple levels pretty quickly. I would expect wherever he starts this year, he will probably move a couple levels again. And again, it's always a fun game to try to predict, but the players, it's just like teaching a course. The student accumulates points and you assign a grade. And in this arena, the players' performance dictates where they go and how quick they move. And, my guess is if we asked Julio this question, he would say, start me wherever you want to start me, and I'll finish in the big leagues. And, whether that happens or not, I don't know, but I would expect him to continue to progress on a similar track to what he was doing in 2019.
Also, just quickly, a couple of your guys that had TJ, Levi Stout, Sam Carlson, some of those guys coming off injuries, will they be ready to go when the minor leaguers report? Or we've talked to Scott about Munoz, but some of the other guys coming off some injuries, where are they at?
Yeah. I mean, Stout was kind of the a bit of the talk of the fall league, which was great for him, and he's fully recovered. He was exceptional down in Peoria, and no reason to think he won't be ready to go. Sam Carlson as well was on the mound competing, and everything that we wanted to see in Sam, we saw. We didn't see it all put together on a consistent basis, but we did see it in bits and pieces, which is fairly normal for somebody who missed that amount of time. So then I know nobody's outworked Sam this offseason. So we expect both of them to take the ball and pitch immediately as soon as spring training is here and be built up and be on a regular track once the minor league season begins.
Question from Shannon Dreyer.
Andy, when you get these players in front of you, what are the things that you look for to tell you where they're at and if they have caught up to where they need to be?
Just the games. And, it can be pretty obvious when a player looks uncomfortable in the batter's box or the feel for their stuff off of the mound. And when that happens, we'll adjust accordingly. But when we reported to Summer Camp 2.0 last year in Seattle, we felt across the board our players were ready to go. And I mean, that's one of the things that has really changed with baseball players over the last 10 or 15 years. The resources that they have available to them wherever they are, they show up and they're ready to go. And I'm expecting that to be the case. I would think we'll be more pleasantly surprised than we are concerned, just like we were each step of the way. And, even going back into Peoria, I mean, we had players that had not done anything since mid-March in spring training. Joe Rizzo showed up and he was the best player he's ever been as a Mariner. Wyatt Mills was the best he'd ever been. Milkar Perez was an exceptional player down in that league. So, again, it's just different. Players have resources that they haven't always had. So that would be my assumption is that's what we'll see.
And the final question from Andy from Daniel Kramer.
Hey, real quick, Andy, going back to Jarred and Julio, obviously very confident guys. How do you kind of balance that act of really harnessing that confidence while also acknowledging that failure can be such a big part of this game and where they're at in this stage in the development, kind of, bridging the two of those? Yeah.
Well, I mean, to begin with, we're trying to coach confidence into our players. And I think both of those players, whether it's Jarred or Julio, their makeup, and even though they're very different people, their makeup is maybe their carrying tool. And so we're trying to protect that just like you would somebody's curveball or somebody's ability to hit. And I don't want them to lose that. And I think both of them, Jarred is one of the hardest working, most driven people I've ever been around. And so, like JK taking his foot off the gas has never been something that has concerned me. Julio, who outwardly seems to have a lot of fun out there competing and playing. I don't want him to lose that. And that what you're seeing is a form of confidence with him. But he's been through some failure already. He's been through 2 injuries. He's been down into the Winter League. And it's never really been a concern of mine with either of those two. But all of our players, we know that failure is coming. And we prepare them as best as we can for it in terms of sharing information with them, giving them, stories, and whether it was, how Greg Maddux struggled or John Smoltz, what it was like when he was brought to the big league. So we're constantly preparing them for that. And then, when it hits them, hopefully they feel like, okay, this is something that a lot of people have gone through. But both of those players are going to have adversity. Both of those players are going to struggle. Both those players are going to have times that are going to make them, really look inward and decide how confident they really are. And when they get there, we'll be here to support them. But nobody gets through this game unscathed, and those two won't either.
Final question from Lauren Smith.
Hey, Andy. Obviously, we've seen Chris Negron as a player in the Mariners organization and a coach. We saw him at the alternate site working in Tacoma this summer. What do you think he can bring to this AAA position?
I think he brings a genuine desire to help other people. And, Chris and I have a long history together. But wherever he's been, he's always been, the best teammate in the clubhouse. He's always been the leader in the clubhouse. And his playing career was really built on serving others. And this transition for him, it will be challenging. It'll be very hard for him because he's going to be coaching people he played with, which is always unique. But he has such a wonderful disposition of caring about others. And ultimately, he cares about the Seattle Mariners. and he cares about our organization, and he knows that, for him to be a successful coach and to realize the dreams that he has as a coach, it's really going to come down to, his ability to have hard conversations with players, to tell them the truth. We were just talking on a call last week about Greg Popovich and kind of his mantra of hug him and hold him, meaning you got to hug him and you got to hold him accountable. And those are the two qualities that you have to have as a coach. And the more hugs you give, the more accountability you can bring to them. And you got to have both. And Chris is he's a wonderful person, and that personality is going to resonate. And I do think Chris is going to accomplish far more in this game as a coach than he did as a player. And I say that with a ton of respect for what he accomplished as a player. But I think the impact that Chris is going to have on the game of baseball hasn't happened yet. And I could not be more excited for him to lead our group in Tacoma.
Thank you, Andy. We'll take a break and watch a quick video, and we will have right-hand pitcher Logan Gilbert up next.
Thanks,
everyone. Last season, baseball's youngest team led the American League in stolen bases, and it was one of the top defensive clubs in the game.
Holy smokes, Kyle Lewis!
Featured 2 Gold Glovers in the infield.
Are you kidding? That was gorgeous! Evan Watt making the catch!
Plus another with the hardware in his trophy case.
What a play!
Don't forget the unanimous AL Rookie of the Year.
God home run, Kyle Lewis! You cannot stop #1.
And top rookie starter.
Justice Sheffield strikes out the side.
With the Bulldog atop the rotation.
Bulldog tough, you bet.
Oh, and throw in one of baseball's best farm systems. And we've got one question.
Are you ready for more?
Mariners baseball, see us rise.
Welcome back. We now have Logan Gilbert with us. Questions for Logan. First question is from Corey Brock.
Logan, Happy New Year. Hope you're doing well. I know when we talked last summer in Tacoma, you were one of the guys that really took advantage of that time down there to work on the changeup. I'm just curious about the entirety of the time down there. Did you feel like you were spinning your wheels a little bit? Did you have that itch to get to the major leagues, or were there some obvious pluses that you took from your time there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's in the back of your head a little bit, especially when there's other guys in the locker room going up, being sent down, all that stuff. And you're kind of knocking on the door. But at the same time, I think it was a unique opportunity because we don't really get the chance to just focus on developing stuff during a full season when everything's about competing and winning. And of course, that was a big part of it in Tacoma. But at the same time, we're being able to develop things and work on things that we might not otherwise get the chance to during a season.
Question from Daniel Kramer.
Hey, Logan, good to see you. Kind of building up on that, just what were you developing and polishing down there at Tacoma during that time, and how much were you throwing at the alternate training site during sim games?
I think I was throwing we were on a 6-day schedule, and I was usually around maybe 4 innings, maybe 5 innings. Didn't usually go more than that. But of course, like you said, I was working on my changeup a lot. And I think the other side of that was so good was we were facing our own teammates over and over again. So at some point, I had to figure out different ways to attack people and different ways to try to get people out that might have already seen me a few times before. And of course, in the major leagues, when you're playing against your own division, the 4 other teams so many times, you're going to have times where you're facing the same batters and having to figure out new ways to get people out. So I think that was a good experience.
Next question from Ryan Divish.
Logan, where is your comfort level with some of those secondary pitches? I'm sure you've been working on them all off season as well. And then just kind of your thoughts. Jerry's made it clear you're going to go in with a chance to compete for the rotation. Even though you didn't get to make your debut like you had planned last year. I mean, what are you thinking as you go into spring training for that?
Well, first, I'm feeling really comfortable with all 4 pitches. Even in Tacoma, I was working on dropping my fastball usage a little bit. I think I was around 60% in season and even got it down maybe 5% or whatever, just because I had that opportunity to mess around and throw pitches and different counts that I might not otherwise have done. And then looking forward to this year in spring training. I'm hoping I make the rotation at some point. I'd love to help the Mariners win. I don't know when that'll be. But just going into spring training, I'm going to do everything I can to showcase what I have and hopefully be able to help the team win.
Next question for Matthew Robertson.
Hi, Logan. So you've mentioned now some of the things you've been working on, some of the stuff you've been focused on in your development. So I guess then the next question is, what do you think you need to do specifically or improve on specifically to become a major league pitcher?
Good question. I think the main thing is just consistency at this point. And that's what really stuck out to me in spring training last year, especially watching guys like Marco. That's probably the best example you'll find in the major leagues of the consistency of location, the way he attacks, and pretty much every time he throws a pitch, he knows exactly what it's going to do. I think it's a never ending goal. It's just, you refine it more and more. And hopefully every year my pitches can become a little more consistent in the way that I attack hitters.
Next question from Daniel Kramer.
Logan, where are you at in your training? Who are you training with this offseason? And has any part of it been different, kind of maybe given some of the uncertainty with the minor league season coming up?
Right now, I'm training at the Florida Baseball Ranch down here in Central Florida. I've been treating it like a normal off season as much as I can. Right now, I'm just throwing bullpens and getting ready, kind of building it up close to the season. And I don't really know. Well, during the off season, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to shape up. So I was just treating it like normal and trying to be ready around that February time point.
Question from Corey Brock.
Logan, you mentioned the opportunity to face hitters on several occasions. How did your final ledger with Jarred look at the end of your time in Tacoma? And obviously a difficult guy to pitch to, as I'm sure other pitchers in professional baseball would attest. But just looking at it through maybe a scout's eyes, what was that experience like, and what did he do so well?
Yeah, obviously he's a really great hitter, and I think the way he competes is even better. That's just who he is in the box, and it's really tough to keep finding new ways to try to show him things I might not have. I think towards the end, every time he came up to bat, I was showing him all 4 pitches just because I didn't want to keep going back to the same pitch over and over again. So that's just a fun battle right there, just finding a way, challenging each other to try to get the upper hand. And obviously he's really good. So sometimes I got the better of him and sometimes he got the better of me. So that's just how it goes.
Any additional questions? Oh, Ryan Divish.
Logan, I know you study a lot of the analytics and the data and everything else. You talked about lessening your fastball usage. Do you think that is necessary for you to have success, or is that something you just wanted to kind of experiment with? I mean, moving forward and analyzing these hitters, I mean, you were at summer camp. Do you think you have to be less fastball heavy to have success?
Yeah, good question. Right now, I'm not really positive. It was more of an experiment in Tacoma and looking into some of the numbers of guys like DeGrom and Syndergaard, just like some of the best fastballs in the game, and they actually use it way less than you might think they would. So it's not necessarily something I'll do. I think the hitters will tell me everything I need to know. So it was showing myself that I could do it if I wanted to. And, if that's something that I need to pursue down the road, I think, like I said, the hitters will tell me, and just being able in my mind to know that I can keep it where it's at if I need to, or change it a little bit.
We have a question from our social media, Adam.
Hi, Logan. This is from a fan on Facebook. He asks, who's your biggest inspiration as a pitcher, and who did you emulate growing up as a pitcher, or which do you most equate yourself to?
I think my favorite right now is probably Jacob DeGrom. Last season, I don't think I missed a start. I was watching everyone on the MLB app just because he's, I think, the best in the game right now. What he does is pretty unbelievable with every pitch. So I know we have our differences in the way we pitch and the way our body moves and that kind of stuff, but just from a fan perspective, almost, he's really fun to watch and take things here and there from him.
Any other questions? Thank you, Logan.
All
We
right.
will take a quick break, and we will be back with right-hand pitcher Emerson Hancock. Emerson was our first-round pick in the 2020 MLB first-year player draft out of the University of Georgia. Welcome, Emerson, and thanks for joining us today. Questions for Emerson?
Thank you.
First question from Jen Mueller.
Hey, Emerson, I know you didn't get to do a lot of throwing in Tacoma last year, but what did the experience being around those guys allow you to work on in the off season?
Yeah, I think it was just I was really fortunate to be a part of that site and just really just learn, observe, find things that, very successful guys who are already in the big leagues and coming back down, just trying to pick their brain. And then just really having that realization, like this is what I want to do. This is kind of the people that I can learn from and kind of take things from them to move forward.
Next question from Daniel Kramer.
Hey, Logan, kind of building off that, how did pitching in the SEC over 3 seasons kind of help prepare you to get to this level as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of the hitters that you see in the SEC have turned out to be really good big league players, and the talent's there. Every weekend you're facing someone who's really, really good with a really good coaching staff, disciplined hitters. So I think just go ahead and finding ways to get those guys out now, learning things as early as I can. I think it can really help me kind of translate moving forward.
Question from Shannon Dreher.
Emerson, taking what you saw when you were around the team and the work that you did in Tacoma, how have you prepared yourself? Have you gone about preparing yourself for the upcoming season, both in your expectations and the actual work that you have been doing?
Yeah, I think it was just real eye-opening to see, how much work actually goes in on a daily basis. Coming from college, it's more you have these focuses around class or other things. Now it's like, I can really commit to this. I really know what I need to do each day. And the expectations for this year are really just hopefully have that opportunity to go out and compete and play and be with the guys again and win wherever we're at, any level or any league. And that's just my expectations for this year for sure.
Question from Corey Brock.
Emerson, I imagine at some point in Tacoma, you're begging these guys to let you get on the mound and throw to some live hitters. Was that a little bit of a mental adjustment, understanding that last summer wasn't about facing batters, getting innings, and just working on some of the other aspects? I imagine you want to pitch, you're a competitor, but did that eat at you for a while, or did you get over that pretty quickly?
I think I got over it. I think I kind of realized, we're looking at the long run, the big picture, that the things that we're doing in that summer, and even though I wasn't pitching, it was really helping me establish a foundation that I could use for the next season, and just really putting in that work now to kind of reap the benefits in the coming year. So I think that was a really good plan that we had, and had some really good people help me along with it.
Question from Daniel Kramer.
Emerson, we just talked with Logan, and he said, obviously at a different stage of his career than you are right now, but he utilized the time to really work on things, specifically his changeup. Were there any things that you specifically were working on while you were down there at the alternate site, since you weren't competing in live games?
Yeah, I think we kind of came up with a plan with the coaches there to just kind of use the analytics of the pitches that I already have and try to make them better, whether that's trying to manipulate the fastball spin a little bit, making the curveball a little bit tighter. I think those are just the little things that we had. Obviously, with the limited innings, the limited appearances, it made that a little bit more difficult. But we found ways to get better and improve. And I think the biggest thing was just finding that new routine. That was really what I wanted to emphasize, because I think that's going to be a really good foundation for me.
And real quick, what do you throw besides the fastball and the curveball that you just mentioned?
I go fastball, slider, curve, and change.
Question from Ryan Divish.
Emerson, what did you think of some of the high performance stuff? I mean, I know you went to Instructs and they do a lot of different stuff there. What did you think? And also, you dealt with some of the shoulder stuff and everything like that. Are you fully healthy and ready to go and on your normal throwing program?
Yeah, first, the high performance is really, really good. There are some really good people who know what they're doing, starting in the training room, going to the weight room, and all the things that we've done, the movements, the exercise, the workouts. Can't say enough about it, and the people there, as much they do to help us. And I'm fully healthy. I'm ready to go. I've had a really, really good off season working with some good people down here in Tallahassee, and I'm just excited. I hope we get that opportunity to kind of move forward, everyone get together and play some games.
Next question from Daniel Kramer.
Hey, you kind of just touched on being in Tallahassee, Logan, but what has this offseason been like for you in terms of, training and getting ready, and where are you at in your throwing program?
Yeah, right now, the off season's been great. It's the first time ever that I've just had to wake up, and the only thing I've got to do is go lift, go throw, go work out, do all those things. So I love it. And right now, I'm getting pretty close. The arm has been built up since about around Thanksgiving, getting really close to start getting on that mound progression. And then now we can start working and start having some good times and some fun off the mound.
And who are you training with in Tallahassee?
Titus Sports Academy.
We have a question on social media.
So this is from Brian on Facebook. He says, are there any advantages to being a young pitcher in one of the top prospect groups in baseball?
I think the biggest advantage is, the farm system that we have. There's so many good people to talk to, whether it's Logan, Kirby, Kelenic, Julio. I mean, you just have so many people around you that you can get information and knowledge from. And then on top of that, they're great players, but they're also better people. So I think that's what's really the most important thing and the coolest thing. And I think that's why we're going to have a lot of success here in the future.
Any other questions for Emerson? Daniel Kramer.
Yeah, one more, Emerson. I know there's a lot of uncertainty about the minor league season, but have they kind of given you an idea of where you might start the year if things kind of play out on a normal schedule?
Yeah, nothing really so far, nothing for sure. I know they kind of told us to just kind of keep following the throwing plan and the workout plans that they've given us, and they'd come and give us some information whenever they had it. But I think right now it's just one of those things where you just have to stay ready, follow that plan, and then if they call, if things change, you need to be ready to go.
Thank you, Emerson. We will take a short break and we'll be back with Jarred Kelenic.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We now have outfielder Jarred Kelenic joining us. Questions for Jarred. Corey Brock.
Jarred, Happy New Year. Hope you're doing well. I want to talk about your time in Tacoma last summer. I know probably times where you felt like seeing guys go up to Seattle, maybe feeling like you were ready. There were times you guys didn't have enough guys to finish your scrimmages and all that. How did you sort of view that experience? Was it frustrating a little bit at times? I mean, certainly there was no season to compare it to, and you sort of have to make the best of what you have. But how did you sort of reconcile your time in Tacoma?
I mean, it was definitely frustrating. But at the same time, like, I just try to take it as the same game that I've been playing. Try to block out all the white noise with not having enough guys or playing, 3 times a week. Just kind of came to terms with the situation and tried to just make the most of it and go out and compete as much as I possibly could.
We have a question from social. Adam?
Hey, Jarred. This question is from JJ on Twitch. He says, how much are you looking forward to being called up to the MLB? If so, is there a certain stadium you're looking forward to playing in most?
Well, hopefully I get called up. I'm really looking forward to sharing that with my family. Because I know this is something that's been a long time coming. I've worked extremely hard for it. I'm most looking forward to obviously playing in T-Mobile to have our home field. But also, coming home and playing in Milwaukee, I think is something that's going to be pretty special because I got a lot of family and friends here. So I'd say those two.
Question from Ryan Divish.
Jarred, you faced a bunch of the big league pitchers in summer camp and had success. I mean, does that provide verification for you that you're kind of ready to make this jump? And did you take anything away that you said, I have to be a little bit better at this, or I want to do this better, knowing that this is ultimately where you want to get to?
I definitely think it's reassuring. There's no question about it. I think last year it was just a mess in general with COVID and everything like that. If you were to ask me last year if I felt that I was ready to be in the big leagues, I'd have told you yes. But I would have told you that I was ready 2 years ago. So it's kind of a moot point. But at the same time, like this year's going to be, it's the same mindset going in and going to compete as much as I can and, hopefully get a roster spot and help the team win.
Did you see anything, though, from MLB pitching that surprised you or felt like you had to change up your approach at all? I mean, you saw a variety of different looks throughout the year.
No, not really. My approach has always stayed the same. I was watching, I heard Logan kind of say just being a little bit more consistent on stuff, whether it's, recognizing pitches or learning what pitches I hit really well and learning how certain pitches pitch in different counts. So stuff like that.
Question from Shannon Dreyer.
Jed, a couple of questions ago, you were talking about how not normal the situation was in Tacoma and how you tried to compete as best you could. What were some of the things you did to turn that situation into a competition for yourself?
Try to be better than I was the day before. I think it's that simple, with not even just playing and, not even just being on the field. I would say, whether it was in the weight room trying to get stronger and trying to lift more weight than I did the day before, whether it was, talking to a different player and getting to know them. So I think that it was a lot of different things, but the focal point was to be better than I was the day before.
Question from Jen Mueller.
Jarred, we've heard the pitchers talk about being in Tacoma last year and facing the same hitters every game made them sequence pitches and work on things differently. From the hitter's point of view, what's the benefit to seeing the same pitcher and having to figure out a way to get the best of him every day?
Well, it definitely makes it a little bit harder. Everyone says that, well, you get to see him so many times and you know what he's got. Yeah, well, at the same time, baseball is the game of failure. Everyone knows that. So the odds aren't really in your favor. And so when you throw in that you get to see him, just a couple times a week, it makes it that much harder. But, it was definitely a challenge. And what I try to take away from it is to just like really focus in and hone into or one pitch at a time. That was something that you really had to focus on because the situation was so tough with seeing guys all the time. And I definitely think it's going to help me transition into this year, facing different guys that maybe don't know me as much.
Okay, I know that you were looking at one pitch at a time, but which pitcher did you have the most success against?
I'm just going to say Logan because I think he's listening, and so I just want to make him mad.
Thanks.
Question from Daniel.
Jarred, given that you are obviously coming off of this, unique, somewhat lost season, and that you feel very confident about where you are moving into the big leagues possibly here pretty soon, how have you attacked your off-season program, and has anything been different about that as you get ready to spring training?
Well, I can tell you that I'm super, super strong. I've kind of had the same mentality as every off season. I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I feel like every year I've come into spring training ready to go with not really any injury. So just how to attack or do the same stuff that I've been doing. By the way, Logan just texted me that he's laughing, so he is listening.
Other than
Question from Matthew Robertson.
Hey, Jarred, with the weirdness of 2020 and still all this uncertainty hanging over 2021, I'm just curious, what is a successful 2021 for Jarred Kelenic, by whatever your definition of personal success is?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that need to happen for it to be a successful 2021. I want to be able to get up in the big leagues and help the team win. And kind of going off of what I said before, being better than you were the day before. I think that still applies to the Mariners being better than they were the year before. So I think that a successful 2021 is going to be that I can get up and help the team win, and we can compete for a playoff spot and then some, and be better than we were the year before.
Question from Lauren Smith.
Hey, Jarred. So you mentioned Logan's listening. He kind of gave us his take on kind of the back and forth battle you guys had all summer in Tacoma. What's kind of your view of facing each other every day, and what kind of did you get out of that?
It was a lot of fun. Just because, he's an extreme competitor. There's no two ways about that. And he actually was my locker neighbor. So the benefit of having somebody that is so talented and is so educated in the game, that after, and he'll tell you too, after we would have our games, him and I would sit down, and whether he beat me or I beat him, we would sit down and kind of walk through the at bat, and I would ask him why would you did I show you something in my take for you to throw me a pitch in this count? And then he would ask questions to me why were you sitting on that pitch or something like that. And it's really it was really beneficial, considering the fact that Logan is extremely talented and smart, to pick his brain, because then it's only going to snowball.
Question from Larry Stone.
Yeah, hey, Jarred. I was just wondering if you're concerned that service time considerations may affect your timetable of getting to the major leagues, and what your feelings are about that.
I'm just going to try to go out and play as hard as I can, and it's out of my control. So whatever happens, happens. I know that's a cliche answer, but it kind of applies to anything.
Any other questions for Jarred? Thank you, Jarred. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kelly.
And that will conclude today's media session for today. We'll be back tomorrow starting at 10 a.m. with a session with pitching coach Pete Woodworth and hitting coach Tim Laker, followed by a 2 p.m. session with Mitch Haniger. Feel free to join us for more Baseball Bash today with a 12:30 virtual clubhouse with Julio Rodriguez, 1:30 Instagram takeover with Taylor Trammell, a 2 p.m. virtual clubhouse chat with Tom Murphy and Chris Flexen, a 4 p.m. Twitter takeover with Nick Margavicius, and a 6:30 p.m. Super Trivia hosted by Gary Hill. For more information, check out mariners.com/baseballbash for more details. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for attending this morning's media session. Be sure to visit mariners.com/baseballbash for more fun.